Hello guys, and welcome back to our channel. Now in this video we're taking a look into a hidden chapter of history that challenges everything that a lot of Americans are taught about the origins of the Americas. Now Outcast uncovers the truth about Afro-Indigenous people who were here long before Columbus and how they welcomed Siberian Asians to these lands with open arms. But what happened next will shock you. Betrayed by the very people they helped, these Afro-Indigenous communities were forced into slavery and betrayal, paving the way for events like the Trail of Tears. So make sure to stick around as we uncover the truth that's been buried for centuries. Now, Outcast in this video points out that it's time to confront the harsh reality of American history. By taking a look into history books and doing our research, we'll discover the fascinating story of Afro-Indigenous people inhabiting American land long before others arrived. The narrative takes a devastating turn with the arrival of Siberian Asians, who were initially welcomed by the Afro-Indigenous population only to later join forces with Spanish colonizers and perpetrate enslavement and brutality. So with that said, let's take a look at her video. I will be right back.
My guy. All right, y'all. So I think it's time that I chime in on the whole situation that's going on with the Native Americans and Mexicans being deported. So what I'm going to tell y'all, might going to be shocking. I hope it's not. But, a lot of people like to say that the stuff I be talking about be lies until, it come out. And then y'all be like, oh, you were telling the truth the whole time. Yeah, y'all love to do that. But so it's about time y'all know the truth. And y'all already know. I'm going to give it to you. See, if y'all actually go do y'all research and study deep into those history books, you will realize there was Afro-Indigenous people on this American land. And after a while, there was a people called Siberians. You can go look them up right now. They're Euro-Asians. They crossed over the Bering Bridge. You can go look that up. They came over and they was greeted and welcomed by an Afro race, a black race. This black race greeted and welcomed them, and they also allowed them to live amongst them. And they lived in peace together. Some of them even started having children. That black race that was here on the American soil, they allowed these Siberian Asians to come over. They greeted, welcomed them, and let them in with open arms. They was living at peace. But then, down the line, that's when the Spaniards came over. Christopher Columbus, all them, he was Spaniard. All right, now stay with me, because you know how they teach y'all in school that Christopher Columbus, the one that was here first. Mind you, at this very moment, I'm telling y'all, it's just the Afro-Indigenous people that was there first. And then they greeted the Siberian Asians over there. So now the Spaniards finna come. Christopher Columbus. These Siberian Asian people that the Afro-Indigenous people allowed to come over there and welcome them with peace and open arms. Tell me why they decided to gang up with the Spaniards and to enslave the Afro-Indigenous people that allowed them to be on this land. So basically, the Siberian and the Spaniards betrayed the people who welcomed them even on this land. Those Siberian Asians and them Spaniards betrayed those black people that was here already on this land. And they began to enslave them. So these Siberian Asians and these Spaniards started having kids and basically conjoined together. They became one. So now these Siberian Asians and Spaniards is having kids together. The Spaniards started enslaving these Afro-Indigenous people that was here, and the Siberian Asians helped them. And some of those Siberian Asians even became bounty hunters for the Spaniards whenever their slave ended up getting loose or trying to run away. So some of these Siberian Asians became bounty hunters for the Spaniards for when their slave escaped. And that's where you get the scalping of the head from. Now, I know y'all heard of the scalping of the head, bruh. I know y'all heard of it. See, the Spaniards was telling the Siberian Asians to go hunt them once they escaped. If you can bring them back alive, then do that. But if you couldn't, if you that slave, you had to bring a Spaniard back something of that slave to show that you did what you supposed to have done. So they would cut off the scalp every time they caught one of the slaves escaping and bring their scalp back to the Spaniard to show them that they caught the slave. And that's when the Siberian Asians was betrayed by the same people they helped. So that same knife that the Siberian agents used Afro-Indigenous people of this land in the back with, those Spaniards took it right out of their back and those Siberian agents in the back. And that's where you get the Trail of Tears. That's when you get the Trail of Tears. Let's put the truth out there for real. Let's put the truth out there for real. And that's where you get the Trail of Tears. Basically telling those Indians that they couldn't stay on the land as well. And even with that, they was still giving a deal. Basically, we'll give y'all your own reservations. Y'all still get some land out of it. Because at the end of the day, y'all helped us take over this land. So we're going to give y'all a deal also. We'll give y'all reservations, reparations. We'll make sure y'all straight. But this our land. That's how the Europeans did them Indians after they Afro-Indigenous people in the bag. And when I say Indians, Native Indians, because that was part of the deal. That's what y'all gonna be called. We still gonna give y'all y'all reparations, y'all reservations, and we gonna give y'all the name of Native Indians. We gonna make sure y'all straight, but we want y'all to know that this our land now. So now those European Spaniards took over the whole thing now. And that's why Christopher Columbus saying he discovered America. You see where I'm going? Now the Afro-Indigenous people got in the back. Them Siberian Asians were stabbed in the back, giving the name Native Indians. And now the Europeans taking over. And now their history is that, hey, they found this land. And there was a great deal given. They got their own reservations. They got reparations they getting. All this different money. Shoot. They the ones that mainly own all the casinos. The Native Indians. Siberian Asians. Mixed with some European Spaniard, probably some other Afro-Indigenous people. And not only that, even when they gave them that deal, they even gave them the deal for them to take even some of the slaves and take them on their land. So they even allowed them to have their own slaves. So some of the black people, some of the Afro-Indigenous people was over there on their reservations. They had slaves. The Native Indians. So this Trail of Tears, it probably was them crying. Because they was betrayed by the people that they was helping to betray the Afro-Indigenous people here. So yeah, they was crying because they were betrayed. They thought that this was going to be their land together. And you want to know what the craziest part is? That even when the Civil War and all that started happening, and the slaves was told that they could be free now, do y'all know that these Native Indians was the last people to let go of their slaves? The Siberian Asians, that's the Native Indians. They was the last people to let go of their slaves. They was the main ones that didn't want to give it up when they was told to give their slaves up. Like, a lot of the soldiers had to go over there and make them give up their slaves. Our people are really native of this land.
Now, according to research, the story of the Native American has been a story marked mainly by betrayal and sorrow. Ever since those Pamkala men from across the ocean set foot onto this land, the Native American has lost almost everything. His ancestral lands, his dignity, and even his culture have fallen by the wayside. How interesting is it that the people who came to this land first are the ones who are being shortchanged? From the first contact through the 20th century, Native Americans have been ridiculed. The stereotype of the savage deity Delin Indian is just one of the numerous examples, and this has not helped the Native Americans in any way. The ways of dealing with the Indian problem have been numerous and varied, but the progress succeeded in tearing the Native American away from the land that the Native American held sacred. Whether they be Taínos or Aztecs or Cherokees or any one of many other tribes, they have all been betrayed in one way or another by the Pamkala man. Now, the Cherokee called their forced exile from Georgia to Oklahoma the Trail of Tears. Native American history is nothing but a trail of tears stretching through 5 centuries of horror and betrayal of the Native American. So let's begin at the beginning of this Trail of Tears, because it all started with one man. Blame it on Columbus. Somehow he gets the blame for everything else. Recently, as more has been discovered about Christopher Columbus, more and more he is made out to be the villain. He has always been the villain to Native Americans because he subjugated the natives on Santo Domingo and he was the discoverer of the New World. Unfortunately for Native Americans, the New World was the world in which they lived. Now, Columbus arrived in the New World on October 1492. There he met a group of natives known as the Taínos. Columbus claimed the island for Spain, leave some colonies on the island, and kidnap some Taínos to bring back to the king and queen of Spain. Why did he kidnap them and not just ask them to return to Spain with him? Columbus kidnapped them because the Taínos never would have agreed to return to Spain with Columbus. Columbus did the wrong thing. He took them back to Spain as a novelty item. It was not the only wrong that Columbus committed. Now, Columbus returned to Santo Domingo in a year or so, found the colony that he had planted destroyed, and the people he had left behind unalived. He restarted the colony as colonial governor, enslaved all the Taínos. Now, since they had given him gold when he first came, he required that they keep giving him gold. If they did not, he would chop their hands off. Now, Columbus was not a fair governor. However, he happened to be going crazy. Soon the Spanish sent another colonial governor and recalled Columbus. This did not help the Indians. They were still being treated as brutally as ever. The conquistadors worked their way through the New World. They came across many different Indian societies and destroyed them all. The most glaring example was Cortes and the Aztecs. Cortes was here to conquer lands in the glory of Spain. The resulting tragedy ended with the Aztec Empire being ground up and added to the Spanish Empire. The Native American tribes, groaning under the Spanish yoke of slavery in the land of their forefathers, found hope in a strange place. A priest who had agreed to come to the New World saw all the atrocious things the Spanish were doing. He wrote back to Spain about these atrocities. The Spaniards, who were mounted on fine horses and armed with lances and swords, looked upon enemies formerly equipped with the greatest contempt and committed the most horrible unalivings with impunity. They passed through the several cities and towns, sparing neither age nor but unalived women and children as well as men. They grabbed up women with child that root and branch might be destroyed together. They laid wagers one with another, who should cleave a man down with the sword mostly dexterously at one blow, or who should take his head from his shoulders most cleverly, or who should run a man through after the most artificial manner. Now they tore away children, power of their mothers' arms. Now, the savior of the Indian people in Spanish-speaking territories, he stopped the atrocities and thus stopped the Native American tribes from becoming extinct. To this day, the people of Mexico and South America claim both Spanish and Native American blood. The Aztecs are as revered a national symbol as is Columbus. That's probably the way it should be. Now, the American policies on Native Americans have been mixed. George Washington wrote in what was probably the prevalent view on how to deal with the Native American until this century. The Indians, as has been observed under General Schiller's later, will ever retreat as our settlements advance upon them, and they will ever be ready to sell as we are to buy. That is the cheapest as well as the least distressing way of dealing with them. The most noticeable case of the Native American policy in the new nation was in 1831. The siege was Worcester versus Georgia. What happened is that Georgia law prohibited people from entering Cherokee territory. A minister named Samuel Worcester did. When the state of Georgia arrested him, he filed suit and took it to the Supreme Court. The decision took policy that Native Americans were sovereign nations and were not covered under state laws. Andrew Jackson, the president at the time, said, "John Marshall has made his decision. Now let's see him enforce it." He then sent U.S. troops into Cherokee land and forced them to Indian territory in what is present-day Oklahoma. Jackson had a rationale for this forced movement. In a State of the Union address, he says the tribes which occupied the countries now constituting the eastern states were annihilated to have melted away to make room for the palm color people. The waves of population and civilization are rolling to the westward, and we now propose to acquire the countries occupied by the red men of the south and west. by a fair exchange and at the expense of the United States, to send them to a land where their existence may be prolonged and perhaps made perpetual. Doubles it will be painful to leave the graves of their fathers, but what do they more than our ancestors did, than our children are now doing? Now, this would set the stage for the Indian removal from the Great Plains to reservations. The Cherokee Trail of Tears led to even more horrible things. Westward expansion forced more and more Indians westward, but a person can only go so far west before it is impossible to go further. There is also a matter of the food supply. The Native Americans of the Great Plains were a proud people. They held sacred the buffalo, which kept them fed and clothed, and thus hunted sparingly. The Pamkala man did no such thing. He analyzed them by the herd and wasted what he could not eat. Eventually, there were no more buffalo, and the Pamkala man had to do something about the Native American problem. The government in Washington finally decided that it would place the Indians on reservations, and this concluded the fighting. But it ruined the natives. They were treated as second-class citizens in the land where they had been first. The Native American today is struggling to hang on to this culture in a world that has tried its hardest to yank it away. We have finally come to the end of the video, but what do you our viewers have to say? Share your thoughts, your views as well in the comment section. Thank you for always watching, and see you in our next video.